Shabbat Shalom, everybody. It's Rob Shmuel Ben Yehoshua, Rabbi Stephen, Rashbi in the house. Shabbat Shalom, and thank you again, as always, for tuning in. So, just a word of note, this weekend, my wife and I are going to be traveling to Florida to see my father, and I will not be there. The ritual committee will be handling the services for this weekend Shabbat. And how awesome is it? I'm not trying to put myself out of work, but how awesome is it that we have people homegrown in our synagogue that can do the service in my absence? And John Paul Cohn, with whom I've been working, who I've been mentoring and tutoring, will be leading this. We worked this past weekend. We even got him and his mom, Hepzibah Jen. Thank you very much for being Gabbai and for taking part in reading the Torah. So there'll be some Torah reading as well. So we've got it all covered for you. Friday night, Alana, thank you in advance for joining John Paul on his Baglama, that lute-looking string instrument. And it's an absolute joy. You know, as a rabbi, the word rabbi, it comes from the word rav, which means great, many, whatever. And the connotation of rav is that I'm a teacher, among other things. As a teacher, it's important for me to impart the knowledge, the Judaica knowledge, to our everybody, anybody and everybody. And this is in this week's portion, so let's jump a little bit ahead of that. This week's portion is Ekev. And wouldn't you know it, the one weekend I'm going to be away, this was my bar mitzvah portion. So I'm sad that I can't be doing the Haftorah, but I'm very happy that it's going to be covered. In Ekev, toward the end of the portion, we have the second paragraph of the Shema. Now remember, the Shema is actually not just the Shema, but there's actually three other paragraphs from different places in the Torah. Now, of course, we've got the Shema and the V'ahavta, which we had in last week's portion, Ve'et Hanan. And now we've got the second portion, V'haya im shmo tishma'u el mitzvotai, and it will come to pass if you observe all of these commandments. Now, for those of you that are familiar with Hebrew, as you go through this paragraph, first of all, it's a little longer than the V'ahavta. The other part of it is that parts of it is in the plural. So in the V'ahavta, where it says V'hayula totafot bein einecha, where you put the tefillin between eyes, in this paragraph, V'hayula totafot bein einechem. So it's the plural, in your eyes, your meaning all. Now, of course, in English, you is singular and it's plural. But in Hebrew, there's a distinction, as in most other languages, there's a distinction between the second person singular and the second person plural. So it says that, the emphasis is that we're on a group, right? Not just ourselves, but we take care of each other. So one of the things that both paragraphs says is you will teach them diligently to your children. You probably recognize those words. So obviously, the denotation of the command is that you teach Torah to your kids. But these are our future leaders. These are the people, these young adults, people like John Paul Cohn, Jack Mangan, a few other people, a few other of our young adults, and you'll see them taking part in the high holidays as we have it planned. We're training them to be the future leaders, to take over. So what a better time to integrate them slowly into the leadership, the religious leadership of our synagogue, of our people, to kind of take over. And that's really what's so gratifying. So, and John Paul has participated in the Friday night services, playing the Baglama. Jack Mangan with his guitar and his bass guitar. Even Sasha Amkrad has joined us at times with her guitar. And of course Alana. But these teenagers, these young adults, they're our future, and it's important that we cultivate that. And thank you all. I know it's going to be a little uneven. Maybe it won't. Maybe they'll prove me wrong. Maybe it'll be very smooth. I hope it is. But I'm just saying, giving them the benefit of the doubt. They're still learning. Let's give them a chance. Let's support them. Let's support the congregation, because then more children. We see this during the school year. The kids come up and take control of the Friday night service, and it's been, of course, I'm biased, but it's been such a success there too. So let's support these kids. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Ekev, this portion. So Moses is basically giving a discourse, and it's really interesting because there's like 3 verses in there that we recognize. The first one, man does not live by bread alone. It's in there. It's in this particular portion. The fact that what does that mean? It means that there's not just the physical, there's also the spiritual. You don't just need the physical nourishment of bread. And bread is very important. I think in modern society and in our culture, we've kind of lost sight of that. But bread was an absolute staple in the ancient cultures, and you had various forms. You had the flatbread, the matzah. You had bread, the challah, the loaf, and you had pita bread. And in the Hispanic culture, they have tacos and burritos. The Greek Mediterranean, they also have the pita. So bread's a staple because they've ground up the grain and they put it together in this form that it's a little easier to eat. When I was in Israel years and years ago, one of the other kids, I was 17, one of the other kids come up to me and said, Steve, I had never thought during lunch to put meat in between the bread to make a sandwich, but seeing you do that, now I do that. Most people just eat the bread. They don't think to make sandwiches. That's something, the early sandwich from England. So it's a staple, okay? Man does not live by bread alone, by the physical nourishment. We need that spiritual nourishment. The other part, a couple of other things too, is how they talk about animals. In this particular portion, when it talks about taking care of your animals, the sages derive from that animals get fed first before you eat. You got dogs, pets, cats. Probably most of you that are animal lovers do this anyway. You feed your animals and then you sit down to eat, because animals, a lot of them, they, especially if we're using them domestically, they don't have the wherewithal to go in the kitchen. I'm sure you don't want to see your horse tap you on the shoulder. Ooh, can I cook these oats? I mean, come on, right? So they depend on us, the humans, they're masters for that. So it's important that we do that. We're also commanded to love the proselyte, somebody who takes on the yoke of Torah on their own. They weren't born into it, and it's expected they do it. When people want to become Jewish, it's such a wonderful thing because they thought it out, they've investigated, they've looked, and now they want to be part of our culture. It's just such a wonderful thing. So, in the bulk of this particular portion, Moses is talking to this new generation, and he's reviewing a lot of times the commandments. And by the way, love the proselyte, this is a new commandment. Hasn't appeared before in any part of the Torah. This is a new commandment because they anticipate, what's going to happen? The Israelites are going to go into the land, they're going to conquer it. There might be some people that straggle that say, this paganism, we don't like it. It doesn't do anything for us. It's superstitious. People get hurt. We like what you're doing a lot better. It's more humane. You respect people. We want to be part of that. And we've had people come into our synagogue and say exactly that. I've got answers. I didn't find answers anywhere else. I'm finding them here. And what a wonderful compliment to who we are as Jews. So, Moses is addressing the Israelites, this new generation. Remember, the old generation has died out. Anybody over 20 is gone. And they were slaves. They couldn't handle freedom. They couldn't handle milchama. They couldn't handle the war. Going in and taking the land, the spies. It was a disaster. So Moses is kind of admonishing him. He's giving him these discourses in Deuteronomy. And he's using the pronoun you, the second person plural you. Now, you are stiff-necked. You rebelled. I was up there getting the 10 Commandments. You were down there building it. You. He doesn't say they. He doesn't say your parents. He says you. Why does he say you? There's an old saying, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Now, when Moses approached God, right, after this golden calf incident, and said, how will I know you? What are you, who are you? And God said, you will know me by these attributes. And one of the attributes that Hashem said, he said, visiting iniquity, the iniquity of the fathers unto 3 and 4 generations. So in other words, your parents do something bad, then, the kids and the grandkids and the great-grandkids are basically part of that. And some people say, well, that's not fair. Are you blaming later generations for what the parents did? No. What they're saying is that there's an influence there. You get it from your parents, nature versus nurture. Maybe there's a little bit of nature, maybe there's a little bit of nurture. If you have somebody who is not the nicest person, they're going to impart those values on their kids. And then the kids will impart it on their kids. And finally, maybe a few generations later, Some kid's going to wake up and say, wait a minute, this is wrong. This isn't good. I'm going to change. It's the influence that they have. So Moses is kind of a direct warning. He knows that this is in your DNA. You're a willful, stubborn people. So I'm giving you these warnings. Don't do it when you get there. And just remember, if you mess up and you're kicked, and ultimately you're kicked out of the land, which has happened, God will always be with you. Keep the faith, and God will always be with you. And that's kind of a good message to end on this week. I'm going to miss you all this weekend. Have a good Shabbat. And keep reading, keep listening. And any questions, let me know. Hope you had a good Tu B'Av. Thank you for that. And see you when I get back. Shabbat Shalom.